Hey everyone, this is Melinda Clark, and I am so excited to announce that my new podcast, Beyond the OC, is debuting next week. This spin-off podcast is your ultimate fan destination. Beyond the OC isn't just about rehashing the past, it's about celebrating it in new ways. My co-host and daughter CG and I will not only be reminiscing about the show, but we're also inviting you to join us in shaping the content. Ever felt like a scene or moment deserved more attention? We're here to explore those hidden gems suggested by fans like you. It's a community-driven journey into the heart of the series.
That's right. We are now starting the countdown of your top 50 favorite episodes, and along the way, we're going to be bringing back some of your favorite OC stars and others to find out what they've been up to beyond the OC. So listen up. Please go to the link in the episode copy below to vote. You can also leave us a voicemail message on SpeakPipe, email us at beyondtheocpodcast@gmail.com, or leave comments on our Instagrams and Reddit.
And today we have a very fun bonus episode in store for you all to wrap up our bonus series on Welcome to the OC, An Oral History. What a great book. We are doing something we've never done. A roundtable to discuss reactions and perspectives from our go-to experts. Now, none of these guys were on television without pity, I hope, but they were on and had their own podcasts called The OC Disorder and Keeping Up with the Cohens. Please welcome Ryan and Mike from The OC Disorder and Ryan, Dylan, and Chelsea from Keeping Up with the Cohens. Yay! Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Hi. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. I've never done a podcast with this many voices, and you all just met CG, I think. So I just want to start by saying, I just want to thank you guys, because you guys obviously were doing podcasts for the OC before Rachel and I were doing it. And since I had no idea what I was doing, you two, both of your podcasts were kind of my go-to. And because what I really appreciated about it is you guys could talk about the show in a way that Rachel and I really couldn't quite, because we were just celebrating. And I love that you guys, of course, being fans, could be critical in a very humorous way. And I just want to go around the room and maybe talk a little bit about how that your experience in doing the show and the podcast itself. And just once you heard maybe what Rachel and I were doing compared to what you guys could do. I don't know, just your thoughts on that. I'll start with Ryan Drake.
Yeah, our podcast was born out of COVID isolation, I think. Chelsea, Dylan, and I had all known each other for a while through different avenues, but we discovered through Twitter that we all love the OC and we wanted to do something, literally anything during COVID. And rewatching the show with adult eyes, I think is what we kept harping on, was so different than watching it as like a teenager and seeing all the things that you go, oh, you can't do that on TV anymore. You can't say that on TV anymore. Was really interesting. And really because when we were teenagers, we were so obsessed with just like the kids. And they talk about that a lot in the book, is like the core four, the kids. But seeing how the adult storylines were playing out as an adult was really interesting. And some of it, a lot of it was a hit, some of it was a miss. And we definitely loved making fun of the misses on our show.
Chelsea?
So like Ryan said, the three of us had been friends for a while, and it was really cool to have a designated time that we all got together to talk about something that we truly loved and that was truly so formative of our high school years. This is, when we were all watching the show, this was before Facebook, really. All we had at the time on social media was like MySpace and Instant Messenger. And kind of in the same way that you hear people discuss, like, oh, are you a jock or a princess or a weirdo? Kind of the way that John Hughes defined different teenage groups is really how the OC kind of defined my outlook. And, I remembered thinking to myself, like, I'm not really a Marissa or a Summer. But then Taylor Townsend joined the cast, and I was like, wait a minute, that's who I fit into. And I know that Ryan and Dylan both identified a lot with Seth. And it was a really cool bonding situation. And also I felt like that's how I got, it was a show that me and my parents sat down and watched together every single week. It was a way that I got to know people younger and older than me in my high school. I remember that DVD box set got passed and passed and passed until like the guy who won Prom King called me, when I'm a lowly sophomore, and was like, hey, by the way, is this Chelsea? I have your box set. And I just remember feeling so cool, and like it was my moment in the sun. So it was a really, really fun thing to rediscover and I guess process just as an adult.
Right. Well, and Dylan, I really appreciated your, I guess, your words. You tended to put a lot of humor and
Don't do this. We don't do this to him. Please don't do this. No.
Well, I'm doing it because you give him such a hard time, Ryan. You can tell. So,
That's the Melinda we love.
yeah. Well, everyone, you guys, we had Mike and Ryan on to do our top tens each and I don't know. Do you have anything to add about what we're talking about? Just about your podcast itself and how it was started before we get into the book, Mike and Ryan.
Yeah, we had a couple other podcasts, and we would not stop bringing up the OC because it's how we relate to the world. We both grew up in the OC, though in a much different tax bracket than the main characters of the show. And we wouldn't stop. And so our other co-hosts were like, we're going to make you quit this show. So we said, no, we promise to keep it off the Superhero Show. We just have to make an avenue. So that's how the OCD was formed.
Right.
Yeah, growing up in the OC ourselves, it was nice to watch the show The OC to just see how like people who were poorer and less attractive than us lived.
Yeah, it's a different tax bracket. We owned the county.
Right.
And I want to say, thinking about how, Mindy, how you said you and Rachel approach the show is, as a fan of anything, maybe it's because I'm broken, the things I love, I tear apart. And I talk about what I like about them, but that's how you get in there and what are the different pieces, what's working, what isn't working. And you can do that as a fan. Going to not to talk smack on other critics, but the TV Without Pity folks, and it seemed like they've grown, but is brutal. And all the stuff Ryan and I have done under the pop filter umbrella, we had a rule that's called no die in a fire. You can dislike something and criticize it, but you're not allowed to say the people behind this should die in a fire. You need to be like, remember that they're humans making things at all times.
Right.
We tease because we love everyone here loves the OC, and we will defend the OC to the death. But that doesn't mean that we don't feel like we feel protective of it. But that doesn't mean we're not going to call out the things that don't make any sense.
It was really nice to read in the book that the Television Without Pity people felt bad about what they said. Yeah, especially for the sake of any children that they might have, because if they treated their current children like they treated the OC then, those kids are in for some therapy bills.
It was pretty brutal, and Rachel and I spoke with Josh and Stephanie in the podcast that just came out, but they were admittedly influenced by Television Without Pity. And they when Alan Sepinwall talked to them, they actually said, yeah, but we didn't actually mean we can do your job better than you. We just don't like the character, and we didn't want her to actually leave. And I think it's the book was mature and honest in a way that I guess Josh and Stephanie hadn't quite been in the past in the press. And he said that was because for this book, they could control the narrative this time. So what were all of your initial, and I'm going to ask you, CG, as well, your initial reactions to the book, knowing the show, and, let's get into that. Yeah.
Well, I'll just share first, I grew up on the set around all these people, and as a child, I want to say season 3 was when people were the crankiest, as you can read from the book. And as a child, people were like, Brody had such a bad attitude, blah, blah, blah. But as a kid, he was a light, the funniest guy on the planet. And he keeps saying I was never mean to people. So I was as I was reading, it was really interesting to see how my memories coincided with how the people were actually feeling at the time. Cause I just remember Rachel and Adam and Ben just being so fun and very nice to me on set. And it didn't seem obviously Rachel and Melinda were never, rude or had no bad feelings of the show, but Ben and Adam, they were just genuinely nice people. And it was I was thinking about how I remembered set being as a child versus how they're sharing now, how they felt on set. So I thought that part was super, super interesting.
Yeah. Was there anything about the book that surprised you all? What were your initial reactions?
I think that one of the craziest things about the books, and I think, Mike, you put it perfectly earlier when you said that, if we love something, we destroy, you can destroy it. I mean, you can't really get into the nitty gritty on something unless you really, really love it. And one of the things I loved about the book is there are a lot of moments where a lot of the issues and questions, and wow, that was kind of a strange choice to have this happen in season 3, not to pick on season 3, but a lot of that you could see Josh and Alan and Stephanie, everyone was kind of in that same boat, thinking like, well, what do we do? I think that, one of my favorite parts of the book is how Josh described writing Rainy Day Women as a Seinfeld episode, where he said, I knew I wanted this to happen in the end, and then we just kind of had to figure out how to get there. And so I liked almost being able to point to different points in the book where it's kind of like, well, hey, they felt the same way about some of these things that we did, but I really like that aspect of the book because of how honest it was.
I knew I wanted Chris Brown in there. Let's just figure it out. Let's see how we get there.
Wait, he does. We do talk about that. He did talk about that, right?
Yeah. They took Chris Brown and put him in this role that was completely opposite from who he was, and thought it would be a great idea, and it flopped.
I liked Chris Brown in that role. I did like the footnote on that part to be like, nobody knew. Well, duh, he was a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, he was literally on Sesame Street at that time too. Like,
oh, okay.
But that was in the very brief season 4 chapter of the book, where like season 1 was like half the book, and by the time they got to season 4, it was like 7 pages. Yeah. And I love season 4, and I hope that Sepinwall writes a separate book specifically about how weird season 4 was, because I want a deep dive into that season.
Well, I know for me that did feel like, and I've said this before, that I always had this question from the day that we wrapped. I always wondered what had gone on behind the scenes. And I knew there was some big mystery, and it was layered and in a mystery and enigmatic, to quote Joe Pesci from, anyway, that the JFK movie. It's like an enigma wrapped in a mystery, in a puzzle. But so there was a part of me that really appreciated the behind the scenes executive part of it, because I hadn't known all of that. But there were still moments that I felt that they touched on and still left vague.
Yes.
Did you feel that?
Yeah. Well, and it's clear it felt like reading, because there's the different camps, right? There's the actors, there's the writers and showrunners, there's the execs, but it was clear that the actors never got the full story, because Mindy, you've said that before, and then there's the scene in the book where Peter leans into Josh and he goes, "Someday we'll talk about all of this," and it's very ominous, because what does that mean? And it just feels like, there's a lack of communication from every step to every other step, and it feels like, and especially at the beginning and the history of the OC, people are like, Josh was so young. Isn't that cool how young he was? And it is. And he made this thing that we all love. But maybe somebody should have given him like leadership training. And that's not even on Josh. He was too young. He was writing a hit show. He should know. But it feels like the exec should have been like, oh, maybe a kid in their mid-20s doesn't know how to run a 200-person set and could use. And I know Bob was there and helped guide in certain aspects, but like a true like how to have hard conversations training course feels like it would have solved a lot of the issues throughout the years.
I think they brought up something really interesting that, that Stephanie was very honest about, that her gut was to kind of get close to her actors and find out what's going on. And the network says, no, that is not your job. You're not allowed to do that. Stay away. They're private people, whatever, And she said, I wouldn't necessarily listen to that nowadays. I would have had, and they said in the last interview that they would have had a come to Jesus gathering for everyone to sit down and voice, so that they didn't feel abandoned. I mean, I know for a fact that Peter felt abandoned and, just disregarded later on in the season, and I think that kind of reflected, you can read between the lines in quite a few of the things in the book and get that feeling that, I know that I had many, many conversations with Peter and Kelly at dinner over the years about, like, we were all kind of like confused about what happened. And personally, it's been a nice little last piece of the puzzle.
Well, Peter at the end of like every line says, but what do I know? I've only been in the business for 30 years. So
that was so interesting that like Peter
Yeah.
Gallagher so clearly wanted to be like running the show, and like he was just like, you should do this and you should do this and you should do this, but also I don't know.
What could I possibly know?
He was very much the godfather, like looking over everyone and being omniscient, but also not inserting himself too aggressively at any point.
Also, if I had a note for Sepinwall, it would be to always say Peter Gallagher, because every time he would say Gallagher walked in, I'd be like, oh, watermelons are getting smashed. And then it was Peter every time, and I was like, all right. Fruit safe. The fruit's all safe.
It was good to understand why Tate Donovan kind of came and went. I mean, it was disappointing because I will say, he was one of our favorite characters, even though they wrote, and it was disappointing also that they wrote him to be kind of am I allowed to cuss? Kind of a douchebag on it. So that was disappointing because, he was someone that you really wanted to root for and someone that you really, really wanted to have a redemption arc. I understand that it was kind of budgeting situations, but also it's like, shoot, you're going to let something like a budget destroy a character that all of us had such an emotional attachment to. You know what I mean?
I think it's an interesting thing because I remember very specifically saying to Kelly, God, Tate's leaving. And she just said, he's expensive. And I hadn't even thought about that because, obviously it's also the writers in long form television need to be inspired to continue writing for these characters. And he just didn't have it. But, I do want to say, we keep talking, Josh made the point to me, everyone talks about my age. He said the entire crew and writers, everyone was really starting out. And there was a lot of people that were even younger than he was. So he wanted to make the point that everyone was young.
I just want to say my biggest takeaway from the book is I think I'm in love with Stephanie Savage. She seems so cool. She seems like the coolest person and like someone, if I was in college, I would have just been obsessed with. She seems like very cool, very knowledgeable, very warm. And I don't think I knew that about her. And she she's the biggest hero in the book, in my opinion.
Especially based on that name.
You're
right. Yeah, right?
I did like that they touched in the book that even though everyone was upset about losing Tate Donovan, it was really a cool dynamic to see the Coopers in a trailer. And that is one of the more outrageous plot lines that there ever was. But I think that was one of the things from season 3 that really, really worked.
I really like, Mom, it was a quote from you in the book, and it was saying, have you ever seen Julie Cooper more happy than when she's in that trailer with Caitlin and Marissa? Which I thought was just because everyone freaking hated Julie Cooper at the beginning. But that season 3 is where you see Julie's character arc. Oh no, she actually cares about her family and doesn't need all the riches and the Yogalatis of Newport Beach and can be happy in a trailer with her kids.
I know, for as young as Josh was, I always thought it was wonderful that I always admired somebody who could write storylines for people that were beyond his years. The fact that, we're all on this journey of experiencing things, and Julie's priorities were about literally being a housewife and her image and money, and the kids were somewhere down here. And when life really smacked her in the face and flipped it upside down, she discovered in season 3, this isn't me, but I think the Julie storylines were some of the best storylines were in season 3. And because you take a character and you flip them on their head, and the message is that you can actually, she still found that the most important thing is that she's still safe and loved, and she still has friends. In fact, her connections became stronger because she hit it straight on. And I think in life in general, when something's really hard, being in a trailer is hard, being successful is hard. So it depends on, you got to pick your heart, and she, no matter what, she's a survivor and she puts one foot in front of the other. And yes, I just remember thinking that rewatching the series, I didn't remember thinking that while I was shooting. In fact, it was annoying to be in the trailer. The crew didn't like it, but I think rewatching it, it was that. I agree, CG. So thanks.
Julie and Dr. Cooper, I think, was one of the highlights of the back 9 as well.
Dr. Roberts.
Dr. Roberts.
Dr. Roberts. Oh, what did I say?
Dr. Cooper.
It's Julie Cooper, Nick Cooper, Roberts,
yeah.
Bullet, Atwood.
She has lots of last names.
Oh, the Bullet. Julie just got to have some really, really fun boyfriends. It might be fun to rank them one day. I loved Dr. Roberts. You two falling in love was fun to watch. But gosh, the Bullet. We had so much fun getting to revisit that.
Love the Bullet.
We just called her Julie Hyphen.
Also in the book, I love how excited you were for your scenes with Chris Carmack. You seemed very excited about that.
It was Melinda and Chris were definitely excited about that storyline.
I did, because you open a script and you read especially in season 1, you open a script and you think, what do I get to do? Because I was enjoying this, not only enjoying the character, but the fact that it's in LA and there's all those reasons that I liked it. And it's popular, and you open and it says, and Luke, this is a booty call. And I went, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. This is so, I mean, it's such a character.
You added to the list of shows that I got to watch where you make out with teenage boys.
Now, granted,
God bless you. God bless you, Melinda.
Granted, he was only 10 years younger than you. The age difference wasn't actually that big.
Is it
Maybe
weird
it was
that Alan
nice.
Dale was doing that to your mom in reverse? Like same
God.
thing. Yeah. So it was happening to her as well.
Yeah, so I got to see both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
Thank you for my interesting childhood, Mom.
yeah.
Oh, I
think-
know. Well, and it's so funny because, over the course of recording the podcast, Dylan and I both had children. And I was like, me and Dylan were both significantly older than Mindy was when she supposedly, Julie had a 18-year-old.
In real life, she was 33 when the show started. And she had what was Marissa at the beginning, 16?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She would have been very young, but I was playing older, technically playing older.
And her character was from Riverside, where that kind of stuff is much more normal.
Yeah.
It's just the culture there.
Yeah.
It's like California's Oklahoma.
California's Oklahoma. Thanks, guys.
You don't need to go far outside of LA to be outside of LA. Okay, so is there anything that kind of pops into your head that shocked you when you were reading the book?
We texted about this because this was crazy to me. The dog hostage story from Doug Lyman blew my mind.
I literally, after I finished reading that, I go, Mom, what the fuck? The FBI was involved in it. It's absurd.
The dog napping of Doug Lyman's dog. And you know what's so funny is I remember sitting there while we were shooting and thinking, what's taking so long? We're shooting after the model home, and Ryan's becoming arrested, and it's a scene with the police officer outside. We're in Malibu. It's 3 a.m. And I just remember Peter Gallagher pacing and repeating to himself, I'm doing this for private school, private school, private school, private school. And now I don't remember. I'm sure it was told to us that this was going on, or maybe they were keeping it from us. But to know that actually we were delayed because of this whole FBI thing going on, that's what that was. That's wild. Yeah.
And it's crazy that happened in real life. And then later in the book and in the seasons, they're like, we just had no stories. Use that. Have somebody's dog get kidnapped and the FBI's now. Now you have new characters.
Oh, wait, maybe that's what happened to the dog that was
Dustin.
in the pilot.
Dylan was a big Dustin fan in season 1.
He's somewhere waiting for me, man.
I know a lot of people are different than me about their pets, but 3 years this dog was gone. If my dog is gone for 4 minutes, I'm like,
he's gone forever.
Yeah, like, I'm never going to see that dog again. Also, I'd heard the jump off the boat story before, but that was crazy. And I couldn't believe you guys locked down the #1 fan of Doug Lyman. I wrote his name down. Doug Lyman. You got him for the book. That's crazy. Because, man, does he love talking about what a good director he is.
Oh, man.
He's a unique guy.
Something that shocked me was just kind of people's remembering of Oliver, because something that we talked about a lot on our podcast was that we hated Oliver so much, but we loved that storyline so much. It was one of the most gripping storylines. So to me, that was an incredibly successful thing that you guys, I mean, everything in season 1 was magic. But to me, I'm just like, that is one of the most memorable, exciting, fun, led to so much. That's when Luke became a part of the crowd. That's what led to that amazing New Year's Eve kiss, the Rooney concert. So many great things were involved with Oliver. But it seemed like Stephanie was like, oh, yeah, we learned from that. And we, were really careful on Gossip Girl to not do that again. And that surprised me because I thought that was one of the most exciting things that ever happened on the show.
I think what she was criticizing was that the audience knew that Oliver was shitty before the characters knew that Oliver was shitty, which I feel like has its own pluses and minuses, both sides. I feel like that's what she was talking about more than anything, because we do agree that Oliver was like he was like a really good like wrestling bad guy, where it's like you hate him and you can't stand him, but he's so good you can't turn off the TV.
I think so, and I think that they were talking about how and I asked Josh this. I said, did you clearly you took criticism difficultly and back then, do you still take it the same way? And he said it always stings, but but at the same time, it's like we provide something that we want people to pick apart. It's when they don't care about picking it apart that you're not actually being successful. And I think it had such a strong reaction because people were so invested in the characters. So I agree with you, Chelsea, that I thought it was, first of all, Taylor Handley is such a great actor.
Also, he blossomed very well into a very. We talked about how, like, as an adult, he's a very attractive man on his Instagram page.
Yeah.
Also, we didn't like Oliver because we didn't know about Johnny Harper yet. So once we found out about Johnny, we were like, no, Oliver's fine.
I was surprised at the small amount of Johnny in the book. Like, it was like 4 pages of just like Ryan Donahue ruined this and we moved on from it. And I want so much more than that.
I think they did a good job at saying he's gotten a lot of shit through the years and it is not his fault.
Yeah.
Right. And that, like, I'm not shocked, but I was surprised and really enjoyed the candor of Stephanie and Josh and Brody and Ben in different ways, like, of saying, like, here's how we could have done better, and like really thoughtful. Like, they don't need to put all their fuck ups to the public and to think 20 years later, which is probably why it took this long to think and just be like, own up. And I did like that they like defended. He's another kid. I don't know if any actor, even Sebastian Stan, could have saved that character.
Right. I mean, I think there is something to be said for a visual of, he was a smaller guy compared to Misha. And I mean, I think there is a physical thing that works on camera, but I don't know. I do feel like I want to give hats off to Brody for being as honest as he is. He was honest with us in our podcast. He was honest in this book, so much so that he went back and watched episodes, and he came back and contacted Alan and said, I want to actually say it's not as bad as I remember. Because I do think it's an interesting thing, the narratives that the reality, our versions of reality, and the narratives that we have aren't necessarily, sometimes they grow over the years, and it's not necessarily as bad as we think. Sometimes we lie to ourselves, but the reaction in the media really yanked these sound bites to make it sound like Adam was so unprofessional. And I don't know. I think they made a bigger deal of it in social media than it actually was. I just appreciated him being honest.
I liked how much he kept telling Sepinwall that he was like, I was nice though. Like, I didn't take it seriously, but I was nice. And he said that he was nice like 8 different times, which makes me think that maybe he wasn't as nice as he thought he was being. But
you know what? I would say that now that everyone's kind of, that the idea is out there, when I say I didn't see anyone being unprofessional, to me, it was the people are still there. But when you're a close family and a close group of people working, if one person has bad energy, it's felt, it's contagious. And it's not just the OC. On many, many sets, there's honeymoon periods on shows and in the beginning, and then the work. Honestly, we all know that lack of sleep can just change your life and your experience on a daily basis. And people were just exhausted. It wasn't just the actors. I mean, when I think about the crew, and we talked with like Cindy Miggins, our makeup artist, and she discussed how tired the crew is. And sometimes when they see the actors not being as enthusiastic of being there, it can kind of, like I said, it's a contagious energy. And, I've talked to quite a few people who remember the end being like, people just being unhappy and not being happy to be there. And I always thought that was a little sad because I was always happy to be there. But I don't need to repeat that.
I really appreciated the look back at Misha with the wisdom that we have today.
Yes.
Obviously, back then also, she came up and became such a huge star when just things were changing so quick. I like how they acknowledged Perez Hilton and how we were kind of moving away from tabloid culture into just kind of immediate internet, where Perez Hilton was doodling, penises on people's faces on his website and things like that. And at the same time, while everyone else, I guess Peter Gallagher, for example, went home and was a dad, but Misha's, it seemed like her family or just her camp were sending her on these, okay, well, you have to fly across the country and you have to host a party at Tao and things like that. So it's nice to see people kind of reflect and be like, oh, should we have inserted ourselves a little bit more, for her own well-being? And I'm glad that people are more mindful of that now than they used to be. And also even the wisdom of, she was sitting by herself because she was 10 years younger than a lot of these people, and probably felt kind of awkward in her own skin. And, I'm sure even her skimming through it or reading it, whatever she does with this book, she'll be like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? That probably can be cathartic for her, just to have those difficulties acknowledged.
She was sitting by herself and nobody wanted her Lunchable. You know what? Nobody has written their... It's been 20, 25 years and nobody's written their defense of Perez Hilton yet. Have you noticed that? Nobody's come up and said, but Perez Hilton, he was a great guy. No one
really
stood up
helped
for him.
the culture.
I don't get that. Where's the Perez Hilton defense?
Something with regard to Misha specifically, one thing that she kept hitting on in the book is something that really, another one of these moments where when we're reading through the book and we find, a criticism that we had about the series is almost vindicated in something that a cast or crew member said. One thing that Misha seemed to have an issue with was she preferred a lot of the more dramatic scenes. And I feel like, she's an amazing actress, but in those scenes, like that season 3 finale, Homegirl just shines in that scene. But I feel like, one of her big issues was, I just don't know who the character is right now. I don't know how I'm supposed to play this. And I feel like she maybe like Johnny did, and, be it Sebastian Stan, be it anyone, it's hard to act when you don't know what the character is supposed to be, what the character is supposed to represent. And I feel like, that may have been a lot of the maybe inconsistencies that maybe the fandom felt with the character of Marissa Cooper. Those should not necessarily be laying at the feet purely of Misha Barton, because she hit so hard when those dramatic scenes came up.
Right.
We also talked a lot about how good she was at acting drunk. We were like, wow, she's like, she's very...
that was not an insult to Misha. That like when those scenes where she has to be like fucked up, or she's overdosing, or she's drunk, or she's dying in a car wreck, she kills those scenes so well.
I think you hit a nail on the head, because she has told me, and throughout the book, I think they indicated this, that in the beginning, they really wanted her. They cast her, and then they really kept kind of pushing this kind of Kate Hudson-ish thing that they wanted her to do, like even watching her movies, or that they wanted this kind of bubbly girl. And I think that was like their idea, that they wanted the lead to be. But the moody, deep feeling, sad princess, I think worked well for the show. And because you had the lighthearted comedic in Summer and Seth and such. So I do know that in the beginning there was a lot of confusion, and I think her thing was, you're hiring me, let me do what I do best. And I think they tried to write for that. But then let's not forget that the thing that this book hammered for me is that the network was this very heavy, ruling with this iron fist of what they wanted. They wanted a death. They wanted things they could promote. They and actually, one of the things that Josh and Stephanie said in the book is that they loved Freaks and Geeks and My So-Called Life, and those are shows that only lasted one season.
Yeah, and nobody watched.
The network needed to think this was their 90210.
And this line isn't directly drawn in the book, but it's not that hard to draw, where you have Television Without Pity, who doesn't know how to write shows on one end, and then on the other end, you have execs who don't know how to write shows, who are just like, I don't know, kill someone. Why don't you just kill someone? And they're doing that every season of like, what would be cool? Throw a dart. Do this. Like they don't know what they're talking about either, and you're at their beck and call. Like you have to say, we have to kill someone, or we get canceled.
Right. While at the same time, it's trying to squeeze everything they can out of Josh and Stephanie and be like, pitch us more shows. Why don't you just pitch us another show? You have 3 weeks off.
Spin-off.
You work that whole 3 weeks off. Yeah. Like, that's bananas.
Wait, we have a show called Bananas. 2 bananas fall in love.
Move to LA.
Kill one of them. Designers. Can we kill one of them?
It was really disappointing to see that the outside pressures, like you said, the message boards and then these execs were kind of what made the show lose its spark, because they were trying to force the show to be something it wasn't in season 1. They wanted all these big, crazy moments, and it was just disappointing, because the show could have had so much more longevity, but all these outside factors were what was really harming it.
Right. It's not one thing, because and everyone, I think that's what we're understanding now, and probably before this book, people understand and guess about, but now it kind of puts it all into this perspective of when something's not doing as well as it did in season 1, all kinds of voices come at you to fix it. Well, how about keeping it in one place, not 3 or 4 different time slots over the course of 3 seasons where it's hard for people to keep catching up? And it's like, oh, God,
Who's the new exec who came in the 4th season? And he's like,
Peter Lagori.
We're the NASCAR network now.
I love
and I love how Stephanie was like, excuse me, you're the Simpsons and 90210.
Yeah.
That's and Married with Children. Come on, those are your shows. Yeah.
Well, and in retrospect, you can really make a case for, I know they talked a lot about the first season of OC was 27 episodes, and now everything is 8 very compact episodes where every single storyline matters. And you can really make a case for either kind of TV. I think that there's room for either kind of TV. They talked about Desperate Housewives a ton in the book. And it's very true. And there's like this really famous tweet that talks about like, I want 27 episodes. There's an episode of the OC where Ryan plays soccer and never returns to it. And it was little things like that that just explored another little part of their character, or like gave Sandy like a parenting moment that I thought was really, really fun about the OC, and it's something we all liked. Even just when Anna dipped in for the cotillion episode and left and you weren't really sure whether she was going to come back or not. Little things like that, I think, really built out the world and made you feel so connected. And that's a lot of the reason why everyone was so enamored by Lost's first season and Desperate Housewives' first season. They had these tiny little storylines that made the characters feel human. It wasn't just drama.
Right.
So I don't know. It's comparing 2 different eras of television, but I don't necessarily think that one is clearly superior over the other. I personally like to watch TV to, escape, and not necessarily just to, keep me all riled up with drama.
Also, on our show, we are staunch defenders of the mall episode, and I was not here for Adam Brody slandering the Saved by the Bell trapped in the mall
Get out of here
trope,
with that.
because that's timeless. Forever, every show should have an episode where they get trapped in the mall.
You have to.
Facts.
True
all
Detective, trapped in a mall.
Those are important. Those are a great way to explore characters.
I think what's interesting is, you get older and you realize that what's coming out of people's mouths, or it's kind of a reflection of where they are in life. And if I'm, in our 20s, we're critical and we're subjective and we're cynical, and we want to, and, I was the same way. I did a silly spelling show I was so excited when it was over after 13 episodes. But, I didn't even think for a second about people losing their jobs to it. I was just ready. It was like, we're selfish in our 20s. I'm saying it,
You mean
you can tell that story in the oral history of that spelling show book when it comes out.
It took me too long to be like spelling like ABCs,
Aaron spelling,
and no,
right?
not Aaron spelling. Okay, got
I
it.
thought you were just standing there spelling words the entire time.
For 13 episodes?
It was intense.
Ambidextrous.
That's a long
AMB.
time.
Not only do I think every show should have a multisode episode, but I think we should sign all 4 of the core 4. They have to be in that episode. So the characters of that show look up, and there's the core 4 on roller skates, and now they have to hang out with them for that episode.
And it's just a different Beck song on every TV show.
And Amber Heard.
And Amber Heard, of course.
Yes. Yeah. She can come in and say something dismissive to them and then vanish and never have another guest appearance.
Something
That'd
that
be great for the ratings.
Something that's kind of fascinating to separate, and it's one of the reasons why I love the dynamic that Mindy, that you and CG have, is like how we used to watch TV in days of yore and how we watch TV now. Because I feel like it's bad that I'm admitting this, but I didn't get into the OC during like the weekly episodes until about halfway through season 2. And then, I'm sorry, I'm a fake. I'm a phony.
Fan.
I'm a phony. But I wonder if, when you have a show that you're setting your VCR to record and you're watching 1 episode a week, I wonder if a lot of those kind of inconsistencies, the Ryan playing soccer, the kind of bridges to nowhere, things like that you see whenever you're binging it, if it was a little bit harder to see the cracks when we were watching it as God intended, weekly. Back in the early aughts. But I noticed that whenever we were doing our rewatch, we covered a couple episodes per episode of our podcast, but for the most part, we tried to mimic that style because these long form shows, these 27 episode seasons of shows, it's really hard to sit down and consume 27 episodes the way you would watch, like, Fall of the House of Usher in one sitting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
which I did.
Oh, I did
do that.
I did Midnight Mass that way. I wasn't brave enough to do Usher that way. But I just think that's really interesting, and I'd be interested to hear kind of CG's perspective on that, since it's weird to binge whenever, like, now, in my opinion, because I still like watching stuff week to week. But how did you feel? Did you binge? Did you watch week to week? What did you do, CG?
So I still grew up in like the era where you would like record things, but I didn't watch the OC until I was 18. When, gosh, was it on streaming or did my mom have the DVDs? I don't remember. But I watched it when I was 18. So I did do the few episodes in a row kind of thing. And I do think it makes you look at television in different ways, because if it's once a week, you're like waiting for what's going to happen next. And, your mind is on the big storylines. But if you just watch it in order, you're like, wait, you're much more critical because you see each episode back to back to back, and you're able to find dots that don't totally connect, versus like each episode being standalone. It's kind of more like watching a movie.
Yeah.
It would be like watching, if you think about like soap operas, daytime soap operas, if you were to watch you'd be almost watching identical episodes because they have to go on for years and years and years. You're repetitive in what you're saying. And while Rachel and I were doing our podcast, sometimes we were like, we did a couple episodes a day, or because that's the way the guests would work out. And it was confusing to just do 2 episodes a day. And we couldn't keep it together because a lot of times there's repeating. And I agree that it's designed to watch once a week, or at least not multiple episodes in one day. Otherwise, it just kind of blends through, I would think.
Yeah. One thing I did notice when watching it, like a bunch of episodes in a row, is like when you're watching once a week, it's like, say Seth and Summer break up. It's like, oh my God, are they going to get back together? But when you're watching the episodes in a row, it's like, oh, they're broken up in one, they're already back together.
You've got to be shitting me.
It doesn't, it doesn't like pull that. It doesn't give you the, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because you find out what happens right away. And it doesn't, it takes away, I think, some of like the drama and the excitement of it.
These are water cooler shows.
Yes.
Oh,
you're supposed to discuss them afterwards, not that's what I think. Yeah.
I would be curious to find out someone who, say, I was younger or just wasn't very engaged with television early in life and now totally are. If they were watching the first season of OC the way that people watch TV now, they would pay so much attention to these little side rows and these little tangents, and they would think, oh, this is going to circle back. This is going to circle back. So they would be waiting all season for the payoff of Ryan learning how to play soccer, and things like that. So I'm just curious to see if that is people's experience, or if now just all of us have an automatic filter of, oh, I'm watching one of those wonderful shows from the aughts, so like we're just going to have a long fun ride, rather than now, you watch Ted Lasso, it's 10 episodes, but you know that no line or no caveat is wasted. It's always going to pay off. It's always going to come back quickly.
All right, CG, I'm curious, as someone who watched the OC like later in life compared to when it was on, and as someone who like binged through it in a way that we didn't when it was on TV, could you tell that the quality like maybe like dropped off? Or because I feel like when you're watching season 1 and if you're binging it, I feel like it would just kind of roll into 2 and roll into 3. But could you tell that there was like a big difference in the seasons?
Yeah, when I was watching it, I wasn't like, oh, this season is so much worse than season 1. Like, when you're just watching it consistently, I 100% did not notice the change in quality. Like, I didn't think season 3 was bad. Like, I enjoyed, except, when you're watching it a bunch and there's just Johnny after Johnny after Johnny, you're like, okay. But like I totally didn't notice the change in quality because it was just so continuous for me. I was surprised to read that everyone was like, yeah, season 2 was like, we went into it and it was pretty bad. Like we ran out of storylines, or season 3, we were just trying to do stuff for the network, and season 4 was crazy. Like it all, like, yes, season 1's the best, but I didn't see any discrepancies in.
All right. First of all,
how good it was.
season 4 is the best, but also I just want to say
It's too big.
that like that's a big difference between how you watch and how we watch it. Was like that was a pretty striking to us when you watch week to week, because you get 1 hour a week with the show that you love. And then when that hour is over, you're just staring at the screen going like, what the fuck just happened? What did I just watch? And now I have to wait another 7 days.
When you're able to just click to the next one, it's like you're not, I think that's like with binging shows, you're not actually paying attention to the quality of it. It's kind of just like mindless there in front of you and you just watch it, but when it's once a week and it's something you love, you're really like zoning in on it.
Well, we would go to Dylan's house and rewatch his VHS tape.
Come on over.
Yes.
We're doing Great British Bake Off.
Dylan.
My fax is down, but my Betamax player is up still. So we have stuff we can watch over here.
Just page us when the fax goes back up and we'll come over.
Deal.
I thought it was kind of cool that they talked about Matt Ramsey. Like, I feel like, they talked about Ramsey a bit in the chapter about the third season. Mm-hmm. All of their opinions were largely mine, because I was like, I feel like, whenever they introduced him, I thought it was going to be a really exciting character. And there were some highlights, like whenever they're getting Marissa back into Harbor and he tracks down that kind of judge's son. I mean, I thought that was really cool. But then they were just so milquetoast about him. They didn't
but the fact that
do anything.
The fact that he was an editor as well. So every time it went to his name, and I thought it was going to be like Matt Ramsey. And I was like, I wanted to blow off editing and go to the strip club, man. Why do I have to
Why the editing was different?
I think that's a whole comment. Like that we could do a whole dissertation on what happened to Sandy Cohen being the public defender and them trying to find his place on the show, because there were moments. I remember when Peter was like, I'm working 1 day a week. I've got a couple scenes. Like, I'm number one on the call sheet. What's going on? Mm-hmm. And it, there were doing the rewatch that I did. It was like, it felt so odd that they couldn't figure out Sandy's place when it started so strong. And that's when I was thinking back to all of the admissions of the things that they were going to do. Like, for instance, Ryan was going to actually hook up with Caleb's sexy girlfriend in The Girlfriend. I think it was called The Girlfriend. And that then at the last minute, they're like, yeah, we can't have him do that because then it messes with. So I think there were times where we were sometimes they were almost precious with the characters, not letting them go to these extremes. Do any of you think that as well?
Yeah, the core four for sure.
And with what I appreciate about the book with the Matt Ramseys and the Johnnies, as somebody who likes to create things, and when you're in the middle of it, you're like, how did I make this garbage? This isn't what I wanted at all. Having them talk about it, and there's all the pressures we talked about, but also like they didn't set out to have Johnny be the Poochie of the show. So even if Johnny's not in the scene, all the characters are like, what's with this Johnny? And the people at home watching go, we don't care. And that was not their intent. They were just like, we didn't know what to write. We just kept writing. We have to come out with an episode every week. And same with Matt Ramsey. They're like, I don't know, should he hook up with Marissa? I don't know. It just felt like there's never time to stop and think. So they just like kept going, throw things at the wall. And sometimes that's Golden, and sometimes it's Ramsey.
If in the middle of a scene, if Johnny or Matt Ramsey had just floated to space, would any viewer have been upset?
Best episode
We've just been like, oh, that was weird.
Yeah. Oh, good. He's gone now. Instead of floating up to the sky, he fell down from a cliff.
Yeah. While it says, that was the funniest part of the book. While
the Rock Kills Kid. I did not.
I did not notice that either.
So funny. I actually have a question because I feel like you guys would have a really good answer for this. So like throughout season 2 and 3, all these random love stories come in to try and mess with the core four, like Lindsay, Zach, just Johnny, all these people. I want to know your guys' favorite addition
Alex.
and least
It was
favorite.
Alex. It was Alex.
Okay. Alex.
100% Alex.
Least favorite.
1000%.
Lindsay.
Wait, that was your least favorite?
Favorite and least favorite. Love, I don't know, triangles.
No, something that always stuck with me, a big takeaway that I had from the book was it said, your audience is never going to love characters more than who you introduce in the pilot. And holy hell, is that true with almost every TV show I've ever watched. The only, I guess, addition that I think broke through that was Taylor Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all have just as much love for Taylor as we do Summer or Marissa or anyone else. But really, I think they hit it when they were like, okay, we need to build off of just who is there. as for love triangles, oh
Or
man.
just the addition, like Lindsay.
See, I'm a
and
Lindsay
Ryan
defender.
and that.
Yeah.
Lindsay.
Like Lindsay invented the yarmulke, claws. Lindsay had the Freudian slippers.
She
Like
invented the oboe.
she invented that's pretty sweet.
It's her middle name.
But Alex is the queen.
Alex is the best. The Alex Marissa stuff in the book was really upsetting because we talked on our show about how that connection seems so real and so good between Marissa and Alex. Like that could have been such a longer story. I loved Alex. I loved Olivia Wilde. She's gone on to do some very interesting things since then.
Yeah.
But she was the best. For me, the worst was cousin. Sadie. We called her cousin.
Johnny's cousin.
I
is
just
absurd.
didn't care for cousin. Yeah, I didn't care for cousin at all.
Kissing cousin.
And then it was more of Johnny. Like they
Yeah.
talk about that in the book, but it was just like, oh my gosh, we thought we were rid of him. And
He's
now there's
gone.
a cousin that won't go away.
But
Sometimes
his
Sadie
memory
would be like, "Hey, do you
remains.
remember Johnny?" And Ryan's like, "Yes, yes." I do."
We theorized that happened because they built this whole set of Johnny's house and then he died. And they were like, well, we still have this set. We can't just tear it down. Let's just have cousin move in and do another 8 episodes in here.
It really was true that what you just said about characters introduced in the pilot, like getting and letting Luke leave was like such a mistake. Letting
Such
Chris
a
Carmack
mistake.
leave.
Oh my gosh.
After they developed him into this other character, there could have been so much. And you're very right. Although I did like in our rewatch, we had so much fun watching and of course talking to Michael Cassidy. I thought some of his stuff was so, because I remember it being there and it just being funny, like that second season with him. That was, I think, one of the more successful storylines. I think it was great for Seth, and also it brought in the whole comic book and all that. I gotta say that just brought up something that surprised me in the book, that Adam wasn't excited to do a scene with George Lucas because he wasn't a Star Wars fan, because he was promoting the prequels, and he personally wasn't a fan of the prequels. So
I need to find the commercials of him doing I want to find those on YouTube. They have to be out there.
Right.
Yeah, that definitely didn't frame Adam in the best light, and was a little bit of, I will say there's there's a teenager perspective of the show, and then there's the adult perspective. And at the time, I'm even trying to wonder, I'm like, are some of the things that annoy us about Seth's character, were those things that my parents were feeling, or is it just how we're feeling now more due to like a cultural shift?
Mm-hmm.
But I will say it was just a little bit like, because kind of that description, characterization of him was kind of like bled into some of the frustrations that we had with Seth as a character.
Well, yeah, I mean, not only were the prequels great, but George Lucas, what an amazing acting partner. Like, so much chemistry coming from the other side of the table in that scene.
Let's be honest, he's not much of an actor.
No.
No, but get over it. You're acting with George Lucas.
No, I mean George Lucas was like just the performance. Okay.
No, I mean Brody. I'm like, you're in a scene with George Lucas.
Also, it always messed me up. In the opening credits, isn't there a guy named Lucas George?
Yes. He's a friend.
I always know
he was our line producer.
I would have rather acted against him.
I will say that to kind of bring your question back to what you were asking us, and to piggyback off of what Dylan said, Dylan's definitely more of a comic book guy. Like, he is that type of person. He went deep into comic books on our podcast, much to Chelsea and I's chagrin.
Gross. Who likes comic
tried
books?
to stop him. I agree completely. I know that was facetious, but I was more of a music person. Like, I've always been a music person. So the whole chapter with Alex Bitsavas was really interesting and really cool. And for me, that is my comic books to Dylan. But like, the impact that the OC had on so many bands that I love, and to hear them talk about it almost in a negative way. Like, I feel like Ben Gibbard was kind of like, now you can look back on it and say that, yeah, obviously it was a huge boon and a huge success for us. But at the time, we were just labeled as like that OC band. But to have bands like Death Cab and Rooney and the Killers, I think about all the time about how the Killers have gone on to become one of the, if not the biggest US rock band like in the world. And the first time I ever saw them, the first time I ever heard Mr. Brightside, which is one of the biggest songs of all time, was on the OC. And like, that just has such a lasting impact.
We were talking about, originally you mentioned the Alan Heinberg was responsible for the Marvel, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
after that, you guys can add to that, because my question was, how do you think the book adds to the existing narrative or understanding of the OC's legacy within pop culture and television history? And we can start ending with that. So go take it away, Dylan.
So I was a comic book guy growing up. In case those of you who have heard our podcast couldn't tell that, but so before the OC came out, comic books were still. I mean, we had Spider-Man, the Spider-Man movies, we had Blade, but we didn't have Superman movies and things like that back in the day. But comic books were still kind of not necessarily socially accepted, the cool thing to do. After this show, it almost made it a little bit more socially acceptable. I specifically remember I was going to a football game with my girlfriend's family, and I brought Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis with me, and no one thought it was strange after the OC came out, which I thought was really interesting. But so during this time period of comic books, this is also when we're getting Civil War, all of these kind of Infinity Gauntlet stories that are now part of the MCU. And I think that by Alan Heinberg writing into Seth Cohen just this deep appreciation of comic books, and then in turn making it kind of more, okay, maybe there's not as much of a stigma attached to this. Maybe it's more socially acceptable. Fast forward to 2008, then you have Iron Man coming out. I think that this was a very important, nay, essential first step into what we have today with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and even like what Disney Plus is doing with Star Wars. So as someone who was a diehard comic book guy and still is a medium comic book guy, I'm very glad for what the OC did for my people.
Wow.
Thank you.
Quite
Thank
the
you.
impassioned speech.
Oh,
The
thank
golfer's clap deserved, man. That's crad.
Well, and piggybacking off of that, and I know I've talked about John Hughes 3 times so far on this recording session.
As in the book.
I know. Exactly. But I will say John Hughes is referenced many times in the show, so it seems fitting. But like I said, the Breakfast Club came out. We all kind of put ourselves in those categories. But something so kind of cool about Adam Brody was, by all standards, he was a conventionally handsome man. But they were like, no, he's a loner and he's into comic books and he's very academically gifted, and guys like him can win summer and that sort of thing. And then went even further by saying, okay, Zach, there's someone like Zach who is the a star athlete, can be into these comic books as well. It just kind of reframed what the avenues that people were allowed to be interested in. And it was right around the same time that High School Musical kind of did that same thing, but just with different activities. So I don't know, maybe that was a big takeaway of the aughts, is just like, hey, you don't have to fit into a box. You can do your own thing.
Yeah, it blew the John Hughes very flat caricature open, right? Because all the characters, Summer is a popular girl and she's super funny and smart. Ryan looks like he just wants to talk with his fists, but he's a math nerd who's good at architecture.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so true.
Well, and then Josh always said, when they were talking about him being smart, at one point Josh said to Stephanie, wait a second, he's not smart. And she said, he's not? No, he just thinks he is. And Summer ends up being the smart, or at least the I guess she tests higher, right. I guess. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was one of the most brilliant things that Chelsea said on our podcast at one point, where she said, just because Seth is a nerd doesn't mean he's smart. He's a nerd like Elon Musk is a nerd. So he just likes nerdy things, but it doesn't make him smart.
God, somebody once told me that just because you're tall doesn't mean you're handsome. That was devastating. I didn't know that.
So do you guys have any lasting, do you think that the book changes or just adds to the cultural, Ryan and Mike?
I think it fleshes it out, especially because there's been snippets and some people have been very close-lipped up until now, and we don't know, right, as the fans. And so there's all these absurd theories of like, well, I heard Misha hated everybody and that's why she left, and like they're just the internet just pops stuff up. So it is nice to be like, I think it humanizes everybody. It gives, as a reader, gives me more empathy for everybody. And like, yeah, it's just like, it's a cool story of here's how you make a thing, and it just happens to be a thing that made impacts on us and huge culture impact. So yeah, it was I really liked that aspect of it, and seeing how mature and thoughtful people are about it now 20 years later.
This is mentioned in the book. It's been mentioned on OC Bitches, but like, I don't think the whole group, and particularly you, Mindy, have gotten enough shit for creating the Real Housewives genre. Like,
Oh, so true.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for your
the
service.
Real Housewives and Laguna Beach were like the OGs, and
Mhm.
that has spun off into a million different iterations. But it all started in Southern California. It was all trying to capture that culture that you guys made a fiction TV show about.
and I can
Yeah.
see these housewives like football players at practice running film of Julie Cooper back and forth, watching plays, learning how to act. Like,
Here's how you're
you guys
dismissing.
ruined society.
Jimmy, did you get my froyo?
Yes.
The Nooksies were the original Real Housewives.
Yes.
Mhm.
Really?
Yep.
No, absolutely. And I can't tell you, and from my point of view, growing up in Dana Point, it's a completely, entirely different town today
Mhm.
than it was even 20 years ago. And it's somehow these shows have accelerated it into something that was kind of a little gritty beach town into something completely different. You know, it's everything's starting to emulate Newport Beach.
When you walk
And-
around there now, do they lift you on a chair and they all sing Fergie and buy you froyo?
Yeah, no.
But I liked towards the end of the book, Carmack said, he's like, for years, people gave me shit and said, there's no the in the OC. And he's like, people finally stopped doing that to me, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, no.
And
it's
I
still there.
love so much that Carmack's gotten to have a really cool renaissance on Grey's Anatomy, which debuted around the same time the OC did. Like, that's so cool. It's come full circle.
Yeah. And that's actually really close to what we're trying to do with this podcast. Talk to people and talk beyond the OC, because we all had lives beyond the OC. And I think one of the things that, one of the revelations or the observations I had is that we're presenting a 42-minute entertainment, but there was hours and hours and days of prep that went into that 42 minutes. And it's a world and life unto itself. And the book is a great book just from an industry point of view, and just about, it's a human story about people just collectively doing something together. And even if you're not that interested in the show itself, it's a really good, I think you get more out of the show if you know the show.
Probably.
Get more out of the book if you know the show, probably. But I think it's a great comment on just the fact that we're all just doing our best, and it changes in any given moment. And there's no villains in this story. There's no necessarily right or wrong. People were just doing their jobs, and I think people can learn from it. And I think the narrative of, I don't know, having empathy. Hollywood doesn't always care about your personal life. We know that. And they build us up, they knock us down, and we can only learn from the experience. So I hope you all learned.
For sure.
Does any closing thoughts? Because this was really cool. I really appreciate you all taking the time and entertaining me and talking about. First of all, I want to say to the listeners before I do that, please check out their podcasts. Rachel's and my podcast is a totally entirely different podcast compared to what these guys bring to it, because they bring a lot more observational humor and bring themselves. So check out Keeping Up with the Cohens, and check out the OC Disorder. Is that how you all call it? But any closing thoughts, you guys?
I just want to say that I've been such a huge fan of Alan Sepinwall for a long time, for since college. So when I heard that he was writing this book, I was really excited. And then to actually get into it, was everything I wanted. It was everything I wanted, everything I expected. It was really cool. Even as an OC super fan, there was so much shit in there that I did not know about, or stories that I hadn't heard. So if you're an OC fan, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
And then Mindy, I just want to say, on behalf of all the fans, thank you so much for being a part of just something so big in all of our lives. It was my 4 years of high school, were the 4 seasons. And so it helped me through a lot in high school. And then when we revisited it during the pandemic, it helped us through a lot there. And so the OC has been a very, very bright light for a lot of us. And so thank you for your part in that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
And more than just a personal thing. I mean, it was what me and my parents bonded over. Mm-hmm. And still, when they come over and on holidays, sometimes if we want to just throw something on TV, we put on a Christmaka or a Thanksgiving episode.
Oh, perfect.
Covers all the holidays, yeah, and everybody in the family can enjoy.
I love it. I was going to say, CG, are you grateful for it in any way?
No.
No, I was going to say private school.
Yes, private school. That is what I'm grateful for from the OC. No, I'll say, like, I do agree, even though I wasn't obviously watching it when it was on TV, but watching it back, I do like how it breaks down all these boxes that people are put into. So every single character is multidimensional when you expect them to just be this one type of person. And I think it gives, like, me watching it in high school, it gives you a different outlook on, being growing and all the crap going on in your life. So even though I wasn't a part of the cultural phenomenon as it was happening, I think it's the show changed television, and I think watching it in your teens and early 20s is helpful and more than entertaining. You're welcome, Mom. I just complimented your show.
Thank you. I'm kidding. I get it. Yes.
CG, I do have a question. Which did you feel more uncomfortable watching? Was it Mindy and Luke's scenes, or was it the ones from Entourage with E?
Oh, I've only seen clips of the ones from Entourage. I didn't watch, like, the whole episodes. But there's also Vampire Diaries, which is... Okay, I would probably the OC, because he's meant to be, like, in high... He was playing my age, the age I was watching it. So it was like I could have been in school with him and my mother. Like, I was watching it when I was Marissa's age. So it was like, this is weird.
Oh, I see. You had just related to it on a whole different, we were all just like, oh my God, Queen Julie.
No, it was like, oh,
it, like, closer.
If this was happening now, he's my age. And that's my mother. Ew.
Ew.
At a motel. Ew.
If we're just peppering CG with questions, CG, has Mindy ever said, "How are you doing?" And did you just flip furniture around and scream at her instead of answering?
Not really low-pitched guttural scream.
Yes.
Keep that in your back pocket.
No flipping furniture, but lots of just deep screaming and slamming doors.
She's good at slamming doors.
All right, CG, take your headphones off real fast. I have a question for your mom. Wait, I love that Luke had the line that was like, "You're such a MILF, Julie," and that Fox was like, "You can't say that."
I can still hear.
You know what? That was actually that was one of the moments where we were all, it wasn't just me. Norman Buckley, our editor at the time, who became a director. He said, "Melinda, come upstairs. You have to see the scene of Luke telling you that you're such a MILF." And he put it together, and a bunch of us were in the editing room, and he was like, as he's saying, and whenever we played Ultimatum, you always won. I beat Kiki, and Miss Cooper, you're a total MILF. And then she pulls him in. We all just thought it was so great. We're so wonderful. And somehow it gets through and it gets past the censors and everything. And at the last minute, at the 12th hour, somehow they figured it out, because usually they would catch it in the script.
Some exec dork was like, "Let's go to AOL because we need to look this up and see what this MILF thing means."
They did test groups. I actually talked to one of the censor guys who would come to our parties, and I said, "Come on." And he said, "Well, we all tried to play it off like, Mother, I'd like to, fool around with or something." But they figured it out.
I actually had an experience in high school where I was in the courtyard after school, and someone had found out my mom was, I don't know what it was some show. And this guy comes up, he's like, "Hey, was your mom in this show?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He turns around, group of guys sitting there. He goes, "Guys, this is CG's mom." Pulls up a photo of her, and they go, "CG, your mom is hot." I'm like, this is the worst experience ever. So it wasn't just the OC.
Oh, man. Sorry, honey.
Yeah, we're gonna keep talking about how hot Mindy is for the next 45 minutes.
God. I'm turning beet red. Listen, you guys, will you please let us know? Just shout out your Instagram, and so people can follow you. Starting with Ryan Drake.
I took a page from Dylan's diary, and I'm actually off Instagram right now. But the Cohens Pod still has an Instagram page. COHENSPOD is that page, and I'm sure we'll be posting stuff about this on there.
Okay.
Mine is Trini Woodstock. TRINI WOODSTOCK. Okay, I will say I came up with that handle back in the aughts when everyone was doing fun screen names and not just like their name dot their last name.
I was the
I'll
ironist
preface
for a
that,
while.
and I just decided to stick with it.
That's why my Instagram is Coney 2016.
It's 2012, wasn't it?
We're at your pop filter for a real one.
No, you have Pop Filter, and you're still podcasting your show of shows,
Yep,
right?
Yeah, the Superhero Show if you want to hear all about comic book TV.
Right. And are you guys still podcasting Cohen's Pod?
No, I reached my Dylan quota for the year and I had to stop. I couldn't do it anymore. We finished our OC rewatch last summer 2022, and we haven't done anything since then, although we keep talking about maybe doing something, but we'll see.
We keep getting tantalized by another show that you were in, actually, Mindy.
Entourage. We're keeping up with the chases.
Chasing the chases.
That would be fun. That would be super fun to do. Listen, you guys, this has been so awesome. And I really appreciate your voices. And I thought this was a wonderful roundtable. And I hope every podcast that I do from now on is this good. So thank you all so much for tuning in to Beyond the OC. Please give me a follow at the Melinda Clark, and CG is at CG Mirror. And please don't forget to send us your favorite episodes of the OC. You can either email us at beyondtheoc@gmail.com or head over to the Google link that is provided below, and it will also be linked to our social media handles.
Lastly, please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you like to watch us, check us out on YouTube. Our comments and DMs are always open, so please feel free to reach out and let us know what you want to have us talk about on our later episodes.
Okay, everyone. Bye, you bitches.
Bye, bitches.